Hello everyone, this is Andrew at Crown Academy of English. Today we are doing a grammar lesson and the subject is reflexive pronouns and intensive pronouns. So let's start. Introduction. I am making Mark a cup of coffee. I am making him a cup of coffee. So you can see here the word him is a personal pronoun and this is replacing the word Mark. Okay, so this sentence is correct. But if I would like a cup of coffee, how do we say this? So if I want a coffee, how can we say this? I am making me a cup of coffee. So this is wrong. We cannot say this with a personal pronoun. Here I have said me, which is a personal pronoun, but this is wrong. I am making myself a cup of coffee. This is now using a reflexive pronoun, myself, and this is correct. So here, this is an example of a reflexive pronoun, which is what we're going to look at in this lesson. So in this lesson, you will learn the 8 reflexive pronouns and intensive pronouns. And then you will learn how to use the reflexive pronouns and how to use the intensive pronouns. So let's carry on. So in this column, in red, this is the list of 8 reflexive pronouns and 8 intensive pronouns. So the 8 words are reflexive pronouns and intensive pronouns. It is the same words for both. So in yellow, we have the singular. So the first person is myself. Second person, yourself. Third person male, himself. Female, herself. And neuter, itself. And then we have the plural. So first person plural, ourselves, second person, yourselves, and third person, themselves. So look carefully at the spelling. So in the singular, they all end with the letter F. And in the plural, they end with the letters V-E-S. Okay? Now, so the reflexive pronouns and intensive pronouns, they are the same 8 words, but they are different, and the use of them is very different, and we will see that in this lesson. So first, let's look at the reflexive pronouns. So we use a reflexive pronoun when the subject and object of the sentence are the same person. A reflexive pronoun is an object that reflects back to a subject. So it is an object of the sentence and it reflects back to a subject. Example. Jane is preparing herself for the meeting. As you can see, Jane is the subject of the sentence and she is also the object of the sentence. So this in fact means Jane is preparing Jane for the meeting. So herself reflects back to the subject. This is the object, and it reflects back to the subject. It is the same person. And we can use a reflexive pronoun as three different types of object. So the reflexive pronoun can represent a direct object, an indirect object, or an object of preposition. So let's look at examples of each of these three. So first, direct object. We use a reflexive pronoun as a direct object to reflect back to the subject. Example: Mark is teaching himself to play the guitar. So the subject is Mark, because it is Mark who is teaching, and the object is also Mark. Mark is teaching Mark. So we use a reflexive pronoun, and it is male, so it is himself. The position of the reflexive pronoun is immediately after the verb. So you can see the verb here, teaching, and then we have the reflexive pronoun. Some more examples. I am teaching myself to play the guitar. Jane is teaching herself to play the guitar. So Jane is female, so we use the third person singular female reflexive pronoun, herself. Examples: We enjoyed ourselves at the beach. Mark blamed himself for the car accident. Okay? Let's now look at the reflexive pronoun as an indirect object. So it is very similar. So we use a reflexive pronoun as an indirect object to reflect back to the subject. Example: Mark is making himself a sandwich. Again, the subject is Mark, because it is Mark who is making the sandwich. And this time, the indirect object is also Mark, because the sandwich is for Mark. So, in this sentence, sandwich is the direct object, and himself is the indirect object. And this reflects back to Mark, the subject. Here, again, the position of the reflexive pronoun is immediately after the verb making, and then the reflexive pronoun. Example: My parents have bought themselves a new car. My parents is the subject, and themselves is the indirect object, and it is the third person plural, so we say themselves. As an object of preposition. So we use a reflexive pronoun as an object of preposition to reflect back to the subject. You often talk to yourself. The subject is you, because it is you who is talking. Subject. And the object is also you, because you talk to you. And you can see that this time the position of the reflexive pronoun is immediately after the preposition. So here is the preposition. So talk has a preposition with it. Talk to, because we talk to somebody. So this time the reflexive pronoun comes after the preposition. Example: Jane is looking at herself in the mirror. Okay, so Jane is singular, it's the subject, so it is the third person, singular, female, herself, and it comes directly after the preposition at. Common reflexive verbs in English. Transitive verbs. So, when appropriate, we can use reflexive pronouns as the object of these verbs. Amuse, blame, content, cut, dry, enjoy, help, hurt, introduce, kill, prepare, teach. Now there are other verbs, there are many other verbs in fact, but these are the most common verbs where we use reflexive pronouns. Let's look at some examples. Jane introduced herself to my parents. I enjoyed myself at the party. Okay? And the athlete contented himself with second place. So contented himself, this means that the athlete was satisfied. There are some verbs that are always reflexive, that do not have a normal form. Busy oneself, pride oneself. While waiting for the train, I busied myself reading a book. This means that while I was waiting for the train, I occupied myself. I passed the time reading a book. Okay? I stayed busy. So this list of verbs at the top, of course, they don't have to be reflexive. Sometimes we use them normally without a reflexive pronoun. Okay? But these verbs here, they only have a reflexive form. There are some verbs that change their meaning when they are reflexive. Apply. So the normal use, I applied for a new job today. And when it is reflexive, if you want to pass your English exam, you must apply yourself. So apply yourself, this means you must work hard. So this meaning is very different to when we use apply without a reflexive pronoun. Help. I'm sure you all know what help means. It means to assist. Mark helped Jane with her homework. Okay? But the meaning changes when it becomes reflexive. Mark helped himself to a beer. So helped himself, this means Mark took a beer, or he served a beer for himself. Okay, so the meaning is very different. find. I'm sure you all know what the word find means normally. If you lose something, then later you find something. I found my keys today. But when it is a reflexive verb, it is very different. This morning, I found myself lying on the floor of the bathroom. So this means that I was surprised when I discovered I was on the floor. So it means you discover yourself in a situation and you are surprised. See. So we see something with our eyes. I saw David Beckham in London yesterday. But when it is reflexive, it is very different. When I was a child, I saw myself as a singer. This means I pretended to be a singer. I imagined that I was a singer. So I was dreaming about being a singer. So these verbs change their meaning when they are reflexive. And there are other examples, but these are very common examples. Now let's look at some common mistakes. We do not use a reflexive pronoun after a preposition of place or with if it is obvious that the meaning is reflexive. Instead, we use a personal object pronoun. Example: he took his umbrella with himself. Now, this is wrong. He took his umbrella with him. This is the correct version. So this is because in the context of this sentence, he took his umbrella. Well, the umbrella can only be with the subject of the sentence. The umbrella can only be with him. Okay, it cannot be with somebody else. So we do not need to specify that it is reflexive, because the context of the sentence tells us that it is reflexive. So in this instance, with the word with or another preposition of place, we use a personal object pronoun, with him. A second common mistake is we do not use a reflexive pronoun as a subject. Remember, we said earlier that a reflexive pronoun is an object of the sentence. So we must never use it as a subject. So we must use a personal subject pronoun. Example: Mark and myself went to London. This is wrong. We must say, Mark and I went to London. This is correct. So here we have used a reflexive pronoun, but this is wrong because we need a subject here. Okay? This mistake is very common even with native English speakers. Okay, so be very careful. You will hear this and see this a lot, but it is a mistake. Another very common mistake is in English we do not use a reflexive pronoun for actions that people usually do for themselves. So, example: Mark shaves himself every morning. This is wrong. In English, this is wrong. The correct sentence is Mark shaves every morning. This is not reflexive. Jane is drying herself her hair. In English, this is wrong. The correct version is Jane is drying her hair. David is brushing himself his teeth. This is wrong. The correct version, David is brushing his teeth. Now, these are common mistakes by English learners, because in other European languages, like French and Spanish, then all of these verbs are in fact reflexive. For example, in French, we say Marc se rase tous les matins. But obviously, in English, that is wrong. Because in English, we consider that shaving is, by definition, it is a reflexive action. So we do not need to specify that. Okay? Now, intensive pronouns. Remember, it is the same 8 words, but we use them very differently, and the meaning is very different. So intensive pronouns, they simply add emphasis to a noun or pronoun. So the noun or pronoun that they add emphasis to is called the antecedent. So intensive pronouns, they are not the object of the sentence, and unlike reflexive pronouns, the subject and object are not the same person. So we are not reflecting back to the subject. Okay? We do not have the concept of a reflexive verb. Example. Are you sure that Jane is coming to the party? Yes, she herself told me. She herself told me. So here, the word herself is emphasizing she. It's emphasizing or intensifying the subject. She told me. Nobody else told me. So we are stressing the fact that it is Jane who told me. And so we are saying, in fact, that Jane told me personally. She told me directly. I am making it clear that it was Jane. You must sign the contract yourself. So yourself is emphasizing the word you. We are emphasizing the subject. You must sign the contract, nobody else. So here, the intensive pronoun yourself is intensifying or emphasizing the subject you. Okay? And as you can see, we have 2 choices for the position. The position of the intensive pronoun is either after the antecedent or at the end of the clause. So here we have placed it after the subject, and here we have placed it at the end of the clause. Now there is a specific expression with intensive pronouns. We can say the word by plus an intensive pronoun. And it means alone or without help. Example: my friends don't want to go to the party, so I will go by myself. I will go by myself, it means I will go alone. Jane cooked the dinner by herself. So this means that only Jane cooked the dinner. Nobody helped her. She cooked the dinner alone. The man is sitting on the bench by himself. The man is sitting on the bench alone. This is the meaning. Exercises. Exercise 1. Complete these sentences using the correct reflexive pronoun. Example: David is making a salad. So what is the correct reflexive pronoun? Well, the answer is himself. David is making himself a salad. So question 1, and I will give you a few seconds. The answer is, David, you must prepare yourself for the interview. Question 2. And the answer is, our children are teaching themselves English. Question 3. And the answer is, the horse has fallen on the ground. I think it has hurt itself. Okay, so the subject is the horse. So the horse is an animal. So we refer to it as it because it is neuter. So the third person singular neuter reflexive pronoun is itself. Question 4. The answer is, did you enjoy yourselves in London last week? So it is yourselves, plural, because it was you, plural. We are talking to several people. Question 5. The answer is, I think that Jane is blaming herself for the accident. Question 6. The answer is, we helped ourselves to the buffet. We helped ourselves to the buffet. So this is the first person plural, ourselves. Exercise 2. Use the correct intensive pronoun to emphasize the subject. Example, and this is you singular. Well, the answer is, did you yourself wash the car? Question 1. The answer is, Mark likes to sleep after a meal, but I myself prefer to go for a walk. Question 2. The answer is, the directors are going to approve the accounts themselves. Question 3. The answer is, Jane herself informed me of her decision. Finally, exercise 3. I want you to use the correct intensive pronoun to say that the subject is alone or doesn't need help. Example. The answer is, I am going to New York by myself next week. Question 1. The answer is, we prefer to work by ourselves. Question 2. And this is referring to you, plural. We are talking to several people. The answer is, do you want me to come with you, or do you prefer to go by yourselves? Question 3. The answer is, I didn't touch the oven, it broke by itself. So here we are referring to a machine, to an oven. So this is neuter. It is an object. So it is it. So it's the third person singular neuter, by itself. So this means that the oven, it broke without any human intervention. Okay? It broke without us touching it. So, that is the end of the lesson. If you want to subscribe to my channel, you can click here. Here is my Twitter account. And here are some other videos which you might be interested in. And you just need to click on the screen to start them. Okay? My name is Andrew at Crown Academy of English. Thanks for watching, and I will see you very soon. Bye bye.